thinking in bets, making smarter decisions when you don't have all the facts, by Annie Duke. Now, what makes a decision great? It isn't the great outcome. It's in fact having a good process to decide. And you've got to be able to have an attempt at accurately representing an unknown state of knowledge. So long shots, sometimes these work and sometimes these hit, but you can't then blame an odds maker or the odds themselves, because often when something has happened or has happened, people think, well, it was bound to have happened. Why didn't people know this? And it's a common error, because when you look at things in hindsight, it's quite clear it's happened, but you really need to think about what the accuracy of probabilities prior to this event occurring. Now, we don't really naturally think in terms of day-to-day decisions as bets, because if somebody thinks about what's going to happen, often they think it's a zero-sum thing. Are you confident? Yes, no. Do you believe this? Yes or no? And really, that's not actually what life is like, because you're making constant decisions all of the time, and these can really impact upon you. Now, it's easy to think about poker. The book, as the title suggests, mentions poker quite a lot, and with poker, you're constantly being reminded there's a bet in place, something's happening, and then you have to often think carefully and manage uncertainty, often weighing up probabilities of what the other person may or may not have in their hand. Now, what we have to do is think about how our beliefs come about. Most people think we hear something, we then carefully vet it, and then we form a belief. But in actual fact, we hear something, we decide to believe it or not, and only occasionally do we actually go and think, is my belief true, or should I update this belief? And in general, there's a concept of truth-seeking, and that's a desire to know if something's true, regardless of our belief. And as humans, we don't really practice this very much. We may think of ourselves as open-minded and as capable decision makers, but really, there's multiple citations in this book with high-quality research studies saying that this really isn't the case. If we find something that contradicts our beliefs, we're more likely to try to point flaw at that and dispute this as the evidence behind that. And interestingly, if you're a more intelligent person, you may think, well, that's good, I'm more intelligent than most, I've done my IQ test, I can therefore make better decisions. But in fact, no, you're more prone to fall into a trap of making a more plausible story that justifies your false belief. So what should we be doing about it? Well, try not to just kind of react to a situation in which you're responsive, often in emotion, thinking what should happen. Instead think, well, won a bet. That's one of the bits of advice this book says. You have a probability, won a bet. That makes you then think carefully, what do I know? What do I think I know? And then you can make more informed outcomes from there. The other thing is, the advantage of this is you're then, rather than thinking the binary yes, no, I know something, I don't, you're thinking, okay, well, maybe I know something. I'd say about 75% I think this, and 25% I think something else. And then, if and when you find that your initial gut feeling was wrong, you can quite easily justify to yourself and say, well, I've recalibrated, I'm now, say, 85% the other way. And rather than you thinking, well, that's me kind of lost my credibility, in fact, your own mind narrative can quite clearly show that, that's fine. That's what you've thought, and you've updated your options. Now, there's an overlap with one of Napoleon Hill's concepts about having a mastermind, where you're thinking in your head, about discussing something with different people. And in this particular book, it's suggesting thinking about discussing something with your future self and your past self. So then you're thinking about something in greater detail and thinking, in future I'll have to hold myself account to my future and past self. And it sounds like an unusual concept, but it would make you think more about a decision and think the impact this decision could have on you in future, compared to just making a fairly spontaneous decision. You're more likely to think of a rational outcome and decision there. Another thing that you've often heard mentioned is the 10-10-10 rule. Well, this is really thinking about that. You're questioning something. What are the consequences of this decision in 10 minutes, 10 months, and 10 years? And that can make you think slightly more in a different perspective about something. I really liked the bit about Siren's song and the Ulysses contract. Well, it may actually be Odysseus, but he told his crew that Siren made a noise and people would then be lured in from the magical noise and crash their boats into an island. And in essence, the captain said, look, cover your ears, put beeswax in them, and actually tie your hands to the oars so that you can't go, stop, and then your boat crashes because of the waves. And therefore, this is something that we can do ourselves by actually thinking, okay, can we put barriers in place that will help us avoid having temptations that we don't want to have? Now, scenario planning's another framework suggested where you can think about something and think about possibilities of various outcomes. Now, quite a few people don't like this because it brings to light the fact that they don't know things and they're uncomfortable with risk. But one of the most important points is that every decision has uncertainty. Every decision you make in your life. So how can you think of them better? Well, if you know your outcome that you're desiring, you can then think of that in a positive light, get your outcome set high, completely agree with that, but then think of it with a negative mindset and think, what are the barriers that I'll face here? And this will allow you to then put strategies in place and preempt issues so that you can overcome these. Now, there was a nice point about decision making that I'll just end with, and really it's thinking about decisions you're making and a tree trunk. So you've got a tree trunk, branches come out. We all are delighted to see trees helping Mother Earth and all. But if you chop off a branch, then you lose other potential smaller branches. And that's a bit like a decision, in that you've made a decision, you've done something, therefore multiple different other options have been excluded. So do remember, when something happens, to think back about the time prior to that event and think carefully about your decisions. I do hope that's been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Do take care.